I have a party trick for you. Sometimes my voice sounds like this, and sometimes if I really think about it and concentrate, it sounds like this. So, finally, I'm getting my voice back. So, with that piece of news, some time ago I made a video about overwhelm in the context of how to cope if you're overwhelmed with the amount of stuff you have to do maybe on a project, when you're putting pressure on yourself and you're overwhelmed. However, I want to also make a video about when you feel overwhelmed by pressure coming from the outside world. This comes from a letter I received. I still get letters and emails asking non-sewing related questions, so we're going to go into one of those this week. So it says, "This is a little personal and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What if I have too many things to do to rest? What if my need for rest interferes with my grades, studies and work? How can I, as a sensitive person, rest without falling behind? I've been trying my best to find balance for years and still feel unfocused, tired, easily stressed and chronically depressed and anxious. I have great periods in my life when I feel better, but generally speaking I feel like a failure because I see people hustling and just sucking things up and I can't. I usually need more time to process and to learn new things. I need more time to get to know and trust people. I'm easily confused and feel overwhelmed by things like taxes and other bureaucratic stuff because they seem so abstract to me. I constantly feel like I can't meet the expected criteria for being a normal functioning human being." So, let's unpack this a little bit. I don't think that this person is alone. In fact, let's do a little audience participation experiment here. Raise your hand if you feel like you have trouble meeting the expected criteria for being a normal human being. I mean, do you really think that you and I were the only people who raised our hands? I think a lot of people watching this will be raising their hands. And I think there are going to be comments underneath this video saying, "I raised both hands. I raised both hands and both feet." We all have trouble with this idea that there is an expected criteria for being a normal functioning human being and we're not meeting it. We all have times when we feel inadequate and overwhelmed. So, first of all, I need you to recognise that it's not you. It's all of us. It's all of us. We're living at a time when we are so hyper-connected that we have all sorts of people demanding our time. We have needs that we put on other people, they have needs that they put on us. And that's part of connection and relationship. But when we know so many people, and when there are so many opportunities because we're all so connected, we end up with this world in which we have expectations coming from all sides. And the number of expectations on us are no longer reasonable. When has there ever been another time in history when you have 700 friends, you know? We are, I believe, kind of suffering as a culture. The internet has lots of great things about it. We're more connected than ever. That's awesome. We're also seeing a downside to that. So when I say we're suffering as a culture, I want you to be aware that there is this sort of majority cultural narrative that we're supposed to keep up with everything, even when there are countless demands and expectations coming at us. But also, I want you to keep in mind that this is not about feeling like a victim. When we go into this explanation how, well, it's just the world today is just putting so much demands on us and we're just a victim of the culture we're living in, I don't want us to go into feeling victimised here. The truth is, you can't please everybody. You're not going to please everybody. This is where we get into a conversation about boundaries. And you have to learn to say no, which is easy to say but a lot harder to do. What it's really about when we talk about boundaries, everybody knows that you ought to set good boundaries, and very few of us are any good at doing it. It is really about inner authority. This is a phrase that's come up in one of the coaching groups that I'm in, and it comes up over and over and over again that we're talking about. Really, that's an inner authority issue. And what I mean by inner authority is that you have limits on your energy, on your time, on your just capacity to cope, on your capacity to get involved in different things, on your capacity to pick which things you're going to do. And it is your responsibility to know and to set and to enforce your limits. You can't expect other people to take responsibility for your limits. You can't expect other people to stop asking for your time. We want to please everybody. We want to be nice. We don't want to be seen as being awkward, but we have to learn to say no clearly. And that's a problem because we have so many opportunities coming at us, and they're all great, and they all feel good, even at the level of how many books there are that we want to read. I buy them faster than I can read them, and that's another thing of my boundaries. I need to stop buying a new book until I've read the one I've got. We have these amazing bookstores at our fingertips now. Boop, that's a good book, I'll buy that. Setting limits, setting boundaries, and really this whole issue of saying no and setting boundaries is about inner authority. You've got to know who you are, what you need, and what your limits are. So particularly as a highly sensitive person, if that's how you identify yourself, you need to know what your limits are and enforce them. Having inner authority is one of the most challenging things we need to learn, and we need to take responsibility. And I think that the simplest road into that, and the simplest road into it for you who wrote me the letter, when you feel like you've got too many things to do to rest, how do you rest without falling behind? The way into dealing with this is knowing what your non-negotiables are. What are the absolute things that you need to be able to function? You need a certain amount of rest. If you don't get the rest you need, then you're not going to be able to keep up with everything coming at you anyway. Whether it's schoolwork or however important it is, you're not going to keep up with it if you're sleep deprived. You need to know what your non-negotiables are. And I want you to tell me in the comments below what your non-negotiables are. So for example, my non-negotiables are that my phone does not go in the bedroom. My phone gets switched off in the evening, well before bedtime, at least an hour before bedtime, and I switch it off and put it in another room. There's a certain amount of time each morning which I have to myself before my phone gets switched on, just so I've got a sense of space that I am in control of my day. It's easier in a way to set boundaries with something like this because it's not going to answer back. It's difficult to set boundaries with people because you're afraid of upsetting them. So that's an easy way in. Let me know also what your other non-negotiables are. I have things like, at the weekend, I don't plan stuff for both days. I know I need one rest day, at least. And if I'm doing things, if I'm doing something on the Saturday and somebody asks me to do something on the Sunday, I'm like, nope, next weekend. I'm busy this weekend. This weekend is booked out already because there's something happening on the Saturday. And I don't have to tell them that it's something on the Saturday and that Sunday is actually free. Sunday is not free. Sunday is my rest day. So that's one of my non-negotiables. So you can develop these things as, what are your absolute rules that you have to live by? I have another one about caffeine. I don't really consume any caffeine anymore. This is herbal tea. A little bit of green tea maybe, which has a little bit of caffeine, but that's one of the things I need. So if somebody says to me, shall we get a coffee? I'm not going to be drinking coffee. That's one of my boundaries for myself. Again, that's a boundary I have with myself rather than with somebody else. Another example of great boundaries is anybody who's a vegetarian or a vegan. If you're going to dinner at their house, you have no problem letting them know, look, I'm vegetarian. Or they nor everybody might know around you that you're vegetarian. That's a boundary, that's inner authority. This is what I believe, this is what I'm going to do. It's taking a stand for what you need. Let's practice with the non-negotiables. So what are your non-negotiables? Tell me in the comments below. So on a final note, I just want to go back to something that this person said at the end of their letter. They said that they feel that they can't meet the expected criteria for a normal functioning human being, and they used quotes. And that just says to me, they already know, and we all already know, that that's just a story. The supposed expected criteria for being a normal functioning human being, we're putting that on ourselves. Who do you think you're actually trying to keep up with? And this goes back to that line that we hear, the one about not comparing your backstage to other people's edited highlights. And that literally means me, because what you're seeing here, what you see in my videos, this is very much the edited highlights. So where are you comparing your backstage to other people's edited highlights? Keep in mind that you do that more often than you think you do. And what I keep in mind also now is the other side of that, is when I have a day when I'm flying, or I put up a video that does well, or I put up a post that does well, or whatever it is. On a day when I'm doing well, I try to remember somebody out there right now is having a bad day and is comparing themselves to me when they see this post and feeling inadequate. So it just reminds me that it's just a dance, that we all play both roles. I mean, the TLDR is you are a normal functioning human being. And the expected criteria are not always reasonable, because the expected criteria are something you're putting on yourself. I want you to start thinking about this idea of inner authority, of noticing when you're letting yourself feel like a victim. You can't be living there and making your identity, I'm a victim in my life. You need to find this inner authority where you take a stand and you take responsibility for your own needs. So, step one in that, tell me in the comments below, what are your non-negotiables in your life? And I'll see you soon.